Now, we've moved from older, British Empire period up to the 20s. We've looked at guys in the 50s and 60s. Salk. Let's look at another person in the 60s period. Mr. Arthur Koestler, Ghost in the Machine. He's another important figure that everybody overlooks. People forget this guy. But he was crucial to the philosophy of the global elite. In fact, many of the modern day global elite will cite this book. They'll cite him and his philosophy of how we're all part of this generic collective that's evolving. Right? The perennial philosophy. If you don't know, Huxley has a book called The Perennial Philosophy where he says we're all part of this giant glob and we're all just evolving to be the Godhead, right? We're going to evolve to become the Godhead through technology. But before we get to that, let's look at this fascinating chapter on the Thuggee. Yes. Remember Temple of Doom? Om Nam Shiva, Om Nam Shiva, Om Nam Shiva, Kalima, Shakti, right? Everybody remembers Temple of Doom. These guys love Temple of Doom in the real sense of the Thuggee. In fact, he has a whole section on the Thuggee, and he says, the Thuggee represent this older, this is page 236, this older idea of man evolving, and the fittest amongst men in the ancient world obviously just ate other men, right? They were cannibalistic, and yeah, I mean, it might sound a little taboo to us today, but really it's not that bad. I mean, it's just part of the evolutionary process, right? I mean, the predators eat the prey, and that's just natural, you see. And so he says, there was absolutely nothing wrong with the human sacrifice cannibalism cults of the ancient world, the Aztecs, etc. It was purely natural, and by the way, it was noble. The nobility ate people. Are you gonna say that all the nobility were bad because they were chomping down on their cousins and their brothers? No, I'm not going to say that. That would be bigoted. Can't be bigots. Don't be a bigot. Eat your cousin or you're a bigot. And so he says this sacrifice religion actually was what propelled man's evolution. It propelled man's evolution to the next phase. And he says that now in our day, guess what? This all got to come back for us to go into the next phase. We got to go into the next phase. I'm not kidding. You think this, that's crazy. That would never be talking about eating people and cannibalism. That's crazy. No, really? Is that the last 4 or 5 years, has that shown you how crazy things are? Does this really sound that crazy now? And he says, look, at the end of the book, he says, we're in a crisis. We are in danger because the population is getting too big. Right. Mother Gaia, we're all in the back of some giant turtle. This turtle's going to flip over unless we kill everybody except for our little precious cult. And by the way, if everybody in the cult is a bunch of humans, they're just going to be eating each other. This is crazy. This is madness. But what it actually shows is that we are in a spiritual battle, right? And that's why he says death is just one of the natural processes that we must commandeer to get rid of the evolutionary freaks of nature, which are man himself, right? Man is an evolutionary freak of nature, he says, on page 330. And he says that death and disease are therefore good. More on that when we come back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer, jaysanalysis.com. If you want to get my books, you can go to my shop at the website, jaysanalysis.com. You'll see a shop there. You can also subscribe to my archive. You get access to years of lectures on the topics that you're hearing today. A lot of people don't have time to read these massive, boring tomes, and I don't blame you. And so that's what I do for you. I read these for you, and then I distill them into spastic, entertaining presentations. I was mentioning Mr. Koestler, and finishing up with him, Koestler says, look, it's time to utilize mass mind control on the population. That's literally what he says on pages 332 and 33. He says that mass mind control as a result of the CIA-sponsored conferences in the 60s at the University of California, of San Francisco Medical Center. Holger Hayden, by the way, who I covered in my book, at this conference, they talked about how they could use mass media for mind control. They talked about how they could manipulate RNA and DNA. Yes, back in the 60s, right? Koestler wrote about this. He says that we can increase suggestibility through the mass media, and at the same time, we can go in and manipulate people's RNA and DNA. He says we'll use binary weapons. That's what he says on 334. and that this will all be combined with the poison in the tap water. Yes, poison in the tap water. So all this stuff that you've heard people talking about, John P. Holdren, the science czar under Obama, Paul Ehrlich, right? It's all going back to 50s, 60s, all the way back to Bertrand Russell. But I'm just showing you the continuity through the decades of this unified plan. He says that Big Pharma will have to take a lead role in this first phase, he says, back in the 60s, of beginning to promote large-scale pharmaceuticals in that Brave New World mindset. And he says eventually we're just going to have to give everybody a pill. Everybody will have their soma. And he says the whole of the tap water will be poisoned. Literally, that's the end of the book. And he says this will all be alchemy. Literally, he says alchemy for the process of transhumanism. So they want this mass die-off, this mass kill-off before transitioning into the next phase of the post-human era.